Team principal swap between Ferrari and Red Bull leaked. If you want to know the details of Christian Horner's new contract with Ferrari and Frédéric Vasseur's deal with Red Bull, this video is for you. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. The world of Formula One is bracing itself for a managerial earthquake of unprecedented proportions. A moment so explosive and unexpected that it's already being whispered about in hushed, urgent tones across team headquarters, VIP lounges, and hospitality suites from Milton Keynes to Maranello. Behind the high-security doors of Red Bull Racing and Scuderia Ferrari, final legal adjustments and confidential logistical preparations are nearing completion, setting the stage for a jaw-dropping leadership exchange that will forever alter the DNA of both organizations. The sport, still catching its breath from recent dramas on the track, is about to be rocked again. Only this time, it won't be a driver crash or a last-lap overtake, but a swap so dramatic, so psychologically charged, so symbolically massive, that its consequences will ripple far beyond the garages and pit walls. Christian Horner and Frédéric Vasseur are about to exchange seats, roles, and futures. Two powerful minds, each burdened by months of internal unrest, political stress, and unrelenting emotional fatigue, are preparing to leap into one another's worlds, chasing clarity, power, and escape in equal measure. For Christian Horner, this is not a sudden pivot. It's the result of 1,000 micro-frustrations, a slow deterioration of the very team culture he spent decades building, and a growing realization that the empire he helped create has mutated into something that no longer reflects his vision, values, or authority. On the surface, Red Bull's dominance looks indomitable. The trophies line the shelves. The stats speak of consistency, of strategic excellence, of a machine running at maximum velocity. But beneath the gleaming results, there lies a network of tensions, rivalries, and quiet rebellions that have turned every team meeting into a political maze and every decision into a balancing act between egos. The most volatile of those elements, and the most destabilizing by far, is not a driver or an engineer. It is Jos Verstappen, the ever-looming presence whose influence has expanded far beyond his role as the father of Max Verstappen. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Jos has transformed from a concerned parent into an unpredictable force operating from the shadows. He no longer merely supports his son. He now attempts to steer the entire operation, often bypassing formal structures, whispering into the ears of key personnel, and involving himself in technical matters that should be far beyond his jurisdiction. He appears at team briefings without formal invitation. He corners race engineers to question setups. He imposes himself in strategy huddles, subtly suggesting changes while implying consequences. His presence is no longer just tolerated, it's feared, because no one wants to be caught in his crosshairs or be perceived as unsupportive of Max, the team's crown jewel. Horner, a master of navigating complex team dynamics for nearly 2 decades, tried to contain the situation. He played diplomat, mediator, and protector all at once. But Jos's behavior became more aggressive, his tone more confrontational, his appearances more disruptive. The tension escalated from whispers in the paddock to explosive confrontations behind curtains. The defining moment, the moment that broke the last threads of Horner's patience, occurred during the Austrian Grand Prix. In full view of several Red Bull employees, in the center of the team's hospitality area, Jos confronted Christian with what insiders now describe as a blistering, deeply personal attack. It was not just a disagreement about race strategy or car balance. It was a verbal battle that laid bare the toxic breakdown of mutual respect. Christian, stunned and furious, left the paddock abruptly that day without speaking to the press or finishing his debrief. That evening, behind the curtain of public calm, he initiated a conversation that would set this entire saga in motion. His outreach to Ferrari was not born out of desperation, but precision. He wanted out, but not just any exit. He craved a clean slate, a new chapter at a team that, despite its own turbulence, still held prestige, passion, and promise. Ferrari, meanwhile, had grown increasingly dissatisfied with Vasseur's tenure. Internally, key voices in the Scuderia's boardroom were already entertaining the idea of a new direction. When Horner's signal came, it was met with immediate intrigue. Quiet talks turned into serious negotiations. Discreet meetings were held across Europe. Non-disclosure agreements were signed. A structure began to form. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Simultaneously, Vasseur was enduring his own struggle, feeling the burn of a culture that never fully embraced him, of politics he couldn't navigate, of a team that demanded miracles while tying his hands with ancient traditions and conflicting loyalties. He too was tired, exhausted in fact, by the constant pull between Ferrari's old-school aristocracy and its hunger for modern efficiency. At Red Bull, he sees a system already built, a structure that operates like clockwork, a chance to simply lead without constantly swimming upstream. And so the switch, once unthinkable, is now inevitable. Christian Horner to Ferrari. Frédéric Vasseur to Red Bull. A full-scale, one-for-one exchange of leadership between the two most iconic teams on the grid. Behind the scenes, contracts are being scrutinized word by word. HR protocols are being rewritten. Staff on both sides are being discreetly prepared for announcements that will flip their professional realities upside down. It's not just a matter of new bosses, it's a redefinition of organizational identity. Inside Red Bull, whispers have already begun. Some team members are quietly relieved, hoping that the departure of Horner will lower the temperature of internal conflicts. Others are panicking, worried that Vasseur won't protect them the way Christian did. Max Verstappen remains tight-lipped, but sources say he's uneasy. Jos, according to those close to him, is treating Horner's exit as a victory. In his mind, this is the ultimate power shift, the moment his son's supremacy becomes absolute within the team. But even those who support Jos's vision know that a team without Horner may not function the way he believes. Horner wasn't just a figurehead, he was the firewall, the architect, the storm calmer. Without him, chaos may spread in directions even Jos can't control. At Ferrari, the anticipation is almost electric. The old guard is preparing to be challenged. The younger engineers are bracing for change. The board has placed its bets. They believe Horner can be the man to break the cycle of false dawns and wasted potential. But Christian is not coming to adapt, he is coming to dominate. His plans are already being drafted. His loyalists are being positioned. His intent is not to gradually blend in, but to immediately take control, reshape everything, and deliver results not in 3 seasons, but immediately. He knows the pressure. He welcomes it. And all of it, every maneuver, every whispered call, every confrontation, every secret meeting, has led to this moment. A leadership swap so massive, so daring, so volatile, that no one will be untouched. Not the mechanics. Not the strategists. Not the drivers. And certainly not the fans. Formula One will never look the same again. Simultaneously, while the public narrative focused on on-track performance and development milestones, a far more volatile situation was unfolding within the walls of Ferrari, one that few were aware of, but which insiders now say played a decisive role in shaping the team's future. Beneath the polished press releases and media soundbites, Frédéric Vasseur found himself engaged in an intensifying psychological standoff with none other than Lewis Hamilton. What had once been described in the media as the perfect alignment of legacy and ambition, a historic collaboration between Ferrari's timeless heritage and Hamilton's unmatched racing pedigree, had gradually deteriorated into an atmosphere poisoned by suspicion, unspoken resentment, and escalating hostility that neither party could conceal for long. What began as subtle differences in communication style and professional expectations soon evolved into open confrontation and deepening emotional distance. The breaking point came abruptly and violently in the aftermath of the Canadian Grand Prix, a race that was supposed to mark a turning point for Ferrari's resurgence, but instead became the stage for public humiliation. In what was described as an almost surreal disaster, both Ferraris were struck down by near-simultaneous engine failures, rendering all the team's progress meaningless in the span of minutes. For Lewis Hamilton, who had been reassured time and again that the reliability issues which plagued them in Monaco had been addressed comprehensively, the event was nothing short of a betrayal. When the race ended and the cameras turned away, Hamilton didn't wait. He marched straight into the post-race debriefing room, his face carved with disbelief and quiet fury. Multiple individuals who were present during that now infamous debrief recount the atmosphere as electric with tension. Hamilton didn't shout. He didn't need to. His words cut more sharply because of their cold, surgical precision. Fixing his eyes on Vasseur, he reportedly asked in a voice that was calm but seething with frustration, "You told me this machine was fixed. You told me we could compete at the front. Was that optimism, deception, or just complete incompetence?" There was a silence, long, awkward, charged. Vasseur, known for his diplomatic restraint, didn't stay composed this time. He lashed back with a retort that stunned even the hardened engineers in the room. "If you're looking for certainty, go to a history museum. This is racing, not a fairy tale." That single exchange marked the irreversible collapse of their working relationship. From that moment, the dynamic between Hamilton and Vasseur wasn't just strained, it was fractured beyond repair. Hamilton, typically professional in every detail of team operations, began to disengage. He started skipping key technical meetings under the pretense of scheduling conflicts. Strategy calls became optional for him. He began relying almost exclusively on his personal circle, his physiotherapists, his performance engineers, his longtime data analysts, cutting Ferrari's core technical staff out of loops they were supposed to lead. It wasn't mutiny, but it was mutinous. A silent protest that screamed volumes to those paying attention. Vasseur, sensing the erosion of his influence and increasingly isolated in decision-making, took the conflict personally. He didn't just feel disrespected, he felt strategically undermined. The presence of a 7-time world champion in the garage had gone from being Ferrari's crown jewel to its most unpredictable liability. According to multiple insiders, Vasseur even considered escalating the matter to Ferrari's executive board, drafting a confidential report detailing what he described as non-compliant professional conduct from Hamilton. But the damage had already been done, not just to his relationship with the driver, but to his own standing within the upper ranks of Ferrari's leadership. What Vasseur didn't know, at least not at the time, was that the top brass had already begun holding discreet conversations about leadership succession. John Elkann, Ferrari's executive chairman, along with CEO Benedetto Vigna and a small circle of senior advisors, had been monitoring the situation closely. To them, Hamilton's dissatisfaction wasn't a problem to be managed. It was a symptom of something deeper. Something systemic. Something that required radical change. Vasseur's inability to manage a high-caliber driver like Hamilton under pressure raised alarm bells that no amount of engineering brilliance could silence. A race team is as much about psychology and harmony as it is about speed and downforce. And in Ferrari's eyes, Vasseur had lost control of both. As word of Hamilton's disengagement spread internally, so did the whispers about an incoming replacement. Ferrari's top strategists understood that Hamilton wasn't just an employee. He was a brand, a symbol, a walking empire. Alienating him publicly would be a disaster. So instead, the team adopted a different approach. Stabilize the situation externally while preparing for an internal shift. Vasseur, unaware of just how far the board had progressed in their deliberations, continued to operate as though he had time to fix the rift. He didn't. The decisions had already begun taking shape behind closed doors. Horner's name was already circulating. The end was coming, and Vasseur was the last to know. Behind the scenes, far from the bright lights of the paddock and the carefully staged press conferences, a monumental shift has been quietly gaining momentum. Beneath the surface of both teams, frustration has been brewing for months, even years. Christian Horner and Frédéric Vasseur, two men occupying the most scrutinized roles in modern Formula One, have reached their respective breaking points. The pressure, the internal politics, the mounting tension with drivers and senior personnel alike, have stretched both to the limit. And now, in a twist that feels almost surreal, both Red Bull Racing and Scuderia Ferrari are increasingly convinced that the solution to their deep-rooted issues lies not within, but in an unprecedented exchange of leadership. Red Bull, a team accustomed to winning but now walking on eggshells due to the volatile dynamics surrounding Max Verstappen and his inner circle, has started to view Vasseur not as a compromise, but as a calming force. His demeanor, understated yet firm, detached yet thoughtful, has positioned him as a figure of neutrality in a landscape dominated by ego-driven narratives. He carries no personal baggage in the Verstappen saga, no lingering allegiances or polarizing loyalties. To Red Bull's hierarchy, that alone is a breath of fresh air. But it's more than that. Vasseur's meticulous, methodical style has made him attractive to those inside Red Bull who are craving order, control, and a break from the emotionally charged leadership style that has defined the team for over a decade. Meanwhile, across the divide in Maranello, the sentiment could not be more different, but the desperation, the yearning for radical change, is just as intense. Ferrari's boardroom, its engineers, its drivers, and even its most traditionalist stakeholders have begun to recognize that stability is no longer enough. What they lack isn't peace, it's fire. It's aggression. It's unapologetic, results-first leadership. And in Horner, they see not just a capable leader, but a battle-tested general who built an empire from scratch, faced internal rebellion, media storms, and inter-team warfare, and still emerged victorious. They believe he's not only capable of reigniting Ferrari's dormant ambition, but of instilling a culture of relentless excellence that has been missing since the Schumacher era. He's loud. He's political. He's unfiltered. And that's precisely what they want now. The past 2 weeks have been a whirlwind of clandestine activity. Under layers of confidentiality agreements, behind encrypted emails and private jet flight paths that avoid attention, a deal of almost unimaginable magnitude has been quietly crafted. Not in public, not on the record, and certainly not without risk. In Zurich last Sunday, chosen for its anonymity, security, and distance from racing capitals, a secret negotiation unfolded in total silence from the outside world. Neither man arrived together, nor did they stay in the same hotel. There were no group photos, no smiles for the cameras. Every detail was choreographed to avoid leaks. But insiders with direct knowledge of the developments confirmed that what was discussed wasn't speculative, it was real. And more importantly, it was agreed upon in principle. This isn't merely a managerial exchange. This is a full-scale philosophical overhaul. This is ideology in motion. This is Red Bull, the team that once prided itself on its rebellious DNA, preparing to trade that very identity for a more balanced, structured form of leadership. And this is Ferrari, the most iconic name in motorsport, ready to tear down the cautious bureaucracies that have paralyzed its ambitions and install a disruptor at the helm. Behind the polished veneers of polite diplomacy, there's a brutal calculus being made. Horner isn't just bringing himself to Italy. He has already made it clear he wants a significant portion of Red Bull's technical core to come with him. Names that have been instrumental in shaping their recent dominance. Individuals who know how to build winning machines with minimal compromise. Engineers, strategists, aerodynamicists. People who don't just understand innovation, but who live and breathe the Red Bull ethos of speed at any cost. These aren't just staff. These are the architects of championship glory. Vasseur, for his part, isn't walking into Milton Keynes as a stranger. He's arriving with a list of non-negotiables. He's requested access to specific Red Bull infrastructure, from recruitment databases to simulation technology, and wants full visibility into the organizational pipelines that have kept Red Bull ahead of the curve in talent acquisition. It's not about controlling every detail. It's about importing the systems that built a dynasty so he can stabilize and refine it with his own brand of quiet precision. The ramifications are immense. This isn't simply about job titles or office relocations. These are seismic transfers of authority, with ripple effects that will be felt across every corner of the paddock. PR teams are already preparing crisis protocols. Legal departments have been engaged non-stop, sorting out compensation packages, non-compete clauses, severance terms, and media handling strategies. Private jets are being fueled for untraceable trips. Internal memos are being drafted with vague language to buy time. And perhaps most significantly, trusted lieutenants on both sides are beginning to pack their bags, knowing full well that when these two titans swap allegiances, the very power structure of Formula One will tilt. It's not just about changing faces. It's about erasing old scars. It's about breaking habits. It's about redefining legacies. Christian Horner stepping into Ferrari is more than just a leadership move, it's a cultural invasion. And Vasseur taking the reins at Red Bull represents more than a fresh start. It's a shift toward a less volatile, more sustainable form of dominance. Two empires, both at a crossroads, both ready to burn down parts of themselves to survive, and maybe, just maybe, to thrive once more. And while nothing has been signed in public yet, everyone involved knows the truth. This isn't theoretical anymore. It's already happening. The chessboard has been reset. Pieces are moving. Loyalties are being tested. And in a sport where timing is everything, this silent storm may be the loudest change Formula One has witnessed in a generation. Christian Horner's vision for Ferrari is already taking shape behind the scenes, and at the center of that blueprint stands Lewis Hamilton. Just days ago, away from the eyes of the press in total secrecy, the two engaged in a confidential exchange, an encrypted video call shielded from the public, but rich with consequence. This wasn't a casual check-in or a diplomatic formality. It was a conversation with intent, intensity, and deep strategic implications. From the moment Horner's face appeared on Hamilton's screen, the tone was clear. This was about power, about trust, about shifting the axis of Ferrari's future. Horner didn't waste time. He delivered his message with clarity and conviction. According to insiders close to both parties, Horner made one promise above all, that Lewis would never again find himself relegated to the shadows within a team. The years of playing second fiddle, of being on the wrong end of development cycles or internal politics, would be over the moment Horner walked through the doors at Maranello. "You won't be behind anyone," Horner reportedly told him. "This time, We build around you. This car, this project, this campaign, it's yours. Every component we design, every aerodynamic piece we test, every balance change we simulate, it starts with you. There's no compromise. You come first, always. Hamilton didn't need convincing. After a season clouded by confusion, inconsistency, and a painfully vague development direction, the idea of finally being the focal point once more resonated deeply. He sat back in his chair, processing the words. Then slowly, a smile appeared, not just of approval, but of relief, of recognition, of finally feeling seen again. He began asking questions, one after another, delving into specifics, exploring the technical roadmap Horner had envisioned. He asked about wind tunnel plans, about simulator upgrades, about who would be leading the new development pods. He wanted to know timelines, logistics, personnel movements. It was a full-scale tactical discussion, and it didn't end quickly. The call, initially planned to be brief, extended far beyond an hour. It wasn't just talk, it was a handshake without the handshake. A meeting of minds. A moment that may, in hindsight, be seen as the pivot that changed everything. The first initiative Horner promised wasn't symbolic or superficial. It was calculated, precise, and deeply technical. He would establish a dedicated subgroup within Ferrari's engineering division, whose sole task would be to dissect Hamilton's driving data, analyzing every brake trace, every throttle modulation, every subtle steering input at corner entry. This specialized task force wouldn't just study Lewis's style, they'd architect the car around it. From brake bias tuning to suspension behavior mid-corner, every upgrade would be optimized for how Lewis handles a car on the edge. The intention is crystal clear: maximize his strengths, eliminate his frustrations, and give him the machinery that responds to his instincts, not just his feedback. But such a shift in focus is bound to create tremors elsewhere. And no one will feel them more directly, or more viscerally, than Charles Leclerc. The Monegasque, who has poured years of loyalty, emotional investment, and personal sacrifice into Ferrari's long road back to contention, is already growing uneasy. He's sensed the pivot coming. The hushed meetings, the subtle reallocation of resources, the change in engineering tone, it all points to a dynamic where he may soon find himself on the periphery. Though nothing has been formally announced, Leclerc's inner circle has already begun registering concerns. He's made it known in increasingly candid conversations with his management team that should this trajectory continue, should the team's direction definitively tilt toward Hamilton, he may begin exploring alternative options for 2026 and beyond. For someone who has long envisioned himself as the centerpiece of Ferrari's renaissance, the idea of being sidelined in favor of a newly arrived legend stings with particular venom. Horner, however, is not blind to the risks. He knows the political cost of upsetting internal equilibrium, especially at a team as culturally intense and emotionally layered as Ferrari. But he's also a seasoned operator, someone who has navigated explosive intra-team rivalries before and emerged with silverware. His philosophy is simple: results silence dissent. Performance heals fractures. If Hamilton delivers podiums, poles, and ultimately wins, then even the loudest objections within the team will lose their bite. Horner believes that in Formula One, speed is the ultimate currency, and loyalty follows success, not the other way around. He is betting on momentum. He's wagering that Hamilton, re-energized by a team willing to revolve around him, can lead Ferrari into a new era of competitiveness. And if that means unsettling Charles Leclerc, if it means shifting the team's internal gravitational pull, then so be it. Horner's Ferrari will not be built on sentiment or tradition. It will be constructed around data, dominance, and the belief that to win in this era, a team must rally behind a singular vision. In this case, that vision wears number 44. And the message has already been delivered, loud and clear, even if only through a private screen and encrypted signal. Lewis Hamilton is no longer here to complement the project. He is the project. Behind the scenes at Red Bull Racing, the gears are already turning in anticipation of an inevitable shift in leadership. The corridors of power in Milton Keynes are humming with quiet conversations, strategic positioning, and a palpable sense of transformation. Although nothing has been formally announced, preparations are well underway for the arrival of Frédéric Vasseur, a man known not for theatrical gestures or headline-grabbing declarations, but for his methodical precision, his cool demeanor, and his unwavering commitment to structure and balance within a team's internal ecosystem. Vasseur has wasted no time outlining his vision to those who matter most, the inner circle of Red Bull's executive command. In a series of private briefings, he's reportedly been frank and uncompromising. The message was simple but powerful: influence must be earned, not inherited. He made it explicitly clear that emotional entanglements and family-driven agendas would no longer be tolerated within the team's operational core. No relative should dictate the rhythm of the paddock, he reportedly asserted with calm authority. That single statement, unassuming on the surface, has sent ripples through every layer of the organization. Because everyone knows exactly who he was referring to, even if no names were mentioned. The implication was unmistakable. Jos Verstappen, the outspoken and often polarizing father of three-time world champion Max Verstappen, will no longer be afforded the same unrestricted access or informal sway that he's enjoyed in recent years. Under Horner's reign, Jos had become a persistent and looming presence in team meetings, debriefs, and even garage strategy huddles. Some viewed him as a passionate supporter. Others saw him as a disruptive influence. Either way, his footprint was undeniable. But that era appears to be drawing to a close. Vasseur's approach isn't driven by drama. He's not looking to provoke headlines or create unnecessary friction. His philosophy is more subtle, but no less firm. He believes in boundaries. He believes in hierarchy. And above all, he believes that a racing team must be managed like a professional institution, not a family affair. So while Jos won't be banned outright, the days of him strolling freely through hospitality, offering unsolicited advice or casting long shadows over tactical decisions, are numbered. There will be restrictions. There will be new protocols. And for someone like Jos, who has grown accustomed to moving through the paddock with near-royal treatment, that change is likely to feel like a cold slap. Max Verstappen has already been informed. According to sources close to the team, the reigning champion received the news in a confidential session with key management figures. He wasn't thrilled. He wasn't furious either. He was pragmatic, resigned, realistic. He understands the nature of the business. He knows that his own legacy will ultimately be shaped by what he does on the track, not what happens in the shadows. In what insiders are calling a rare moment of personal clarity, Max is believed to have shrugged off the tension by saying, "I drive the car." He doesn't. A simple phrase, but one loaded with implication. He's drawing a line. One that separates his racing destiny from his father's emotional involvement. Still, those close to the situation suggest that the story is far from over. Jos Verstappen, known for his explosive temperament and refusal to accept sidelining lightly, is reportedly enraged by the decision. Not frustrated. Not disappointed. Enraged. And that fury isn't just simmering, it's bubbling into potential consequences. Behind closed doors, he's said to be actively exploring ways to regain influence, including the most seismic option of all, convincing Max to consider an eventual departure from Red Bull. Specifically, there are whispers, low and cautious, but growing louder, that Jos has begun floating the idea of Mercedes as a future landing spot for his son. Not immediately. Not in panic. But as a warning. As a possibility. As leverage. The conversations haven't escalated into formal discussions with Toto Wolff or the Mercedes board, but insiders suggest that informal feelers have already been sent out. The mere suggestion of Max in silver is enough to send shockwaves through the paddock. It would represent a tectonic shift in the Formula One landscape, a move that could reshape rivalries, championship projections, and the balance of power for years to come. Team members within Red Bull are watching the situation closely. While Max remains professionally composed and entirely committed to winning races in the present, there is a growing concern that any prolonged tension with his father could morph into a deeper rift. Not just personal, but political. Because if Jos continues to feel marginalized, ignored, or pushed aside by Vasseur's incoming regime, his influence could manifest not in paddock protests but in slow, persistent persuasion behind the scenes. It's not about immediate threats or ultimatums. It's about seeds being planted. And Red Bull knows what's at stake. They understand that while Max is currently under contract and publicly loyal, his long-term future is not set in stone. In Formula One, allegiance can shift with a single conversation, a single season, or a single power play. Vasseur may be walking in with order and principle as his guiding lights, but even the most carefully constructed blueprints must withstand the unpredictable forces of ego, legacy, and family. So while outwardly, things may seem calm, the foundations are shifting. A new chapter is beginning. One with fewer voices, tighter control, and a different rhythm. But whether the Verstappen dynasty is willing to accept a reduced role in that new world, or whether they'll push back with all the power they can muster, remains one of the sport's most volatile questions. And in the world of Formula One, questions like that rarely stay unanswered for long. This high-stakes leadership transformation is far more than a fleeting headline, far beyond a typical reshuffle or executive shuffle. It's a seismic message, an unmistakable signal fired across the bow of rival teams, a strategic missile disguised as a personnel move. It represents an open declaration of intent, an aggressive escalation between two of the sport's most iconic powerhouses, both of which are desperate not only to re-establish relevance, but to fundamentally reinvent themselves from the inside out. This is not diplomacy. This is not finesse. This is an open confrontation, a psychological and political chess game being played at the absolute highest level of global motorsport. The stakes are not limited to race wins or podiums. What's on the line now is legacy, control, dominance, and the future trajectory of Formula One itself. For Christian Horner, the man who once built an empire from the ashes of Jaguar racing, this moment marks more than a challenge. It signifies a rebirth, a reawakening, a personal metamorphosis that demands not just survival, but reinvention. The walls are closing in. Controversies have swirled. Internal dynamics have grown more complex than ever. He needs this shift to recalibrate his narrative, to prove that his vision still commands relevance in an evolving ecosystem that now values not just engineering mastery, but transparency, modern leadership, and adaptability under fire. For him, this transition isn't optional, it's oxygen. It's his chance to reclaim the spotlight before the shadows consume everything. For Frédéric Vasseur, who walked into Maranello carrying the weight of history, fan expectation, political tension, and decades of disappointment, this isn't merely an executive decision, it's a full-blown rescue operation. The ship may not be sinking, but it's been drifting without a compass. Strategic errors, internal misfires, and a lack of coherent vision have plagued Ferrari for years. Vasseur sees this as his defining moment. Not a move to stabilize, but to surgically restructure. He isn't trying to win one title, he's trying to architect an era, to end a generational drought by injecting Ferrari's veins with fresh lifeblood, brutal clarity, and the kind of leadership Ferrari hasn't had since the golden age of Todt, Brawn, and Schumacher. He's not here to participate, he's here to rip up the script, flip the table, and rebuild a colossus that has forgotten how to roar. And then there's Lewis Hamilton. For him, this isn't just a strategic career maneuver. It's a lifeline thrown across a storm. After years of chasing echoes of past glory at Mercedes, after watching the hybrid dominance slip through his fingers, after enduring regulation changes that tilted the balance of power away from Brackley, this moment offers redemption. It is a final chapter waiting to be written on his terms, not dictated by team politics or technical misfires. The opportunity to align himself with a reorganized, refocused, and potentially revitalized Ferrari could be the spark that reignites a fire he's refused to let die. This isn't just about winning again. It's about relevance. It's about legacy. It's about ensuring that the final years of his career aren't remembered for fading potential, but for a historic renaissance that transcends statistics. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, now finds himself standing on a precipice. The golden boy of Ferrari, the chosen one, the future champion who's endured heartbreak after heartbreak, he is no longer the undisputed center of the Scuderia's future. This leadership shake-up forces a reckoning. His place is no longer guaranteed. The clock is ticking louder. The team he's loved, the badge he's proudly defended, is evolving around him, perhaps faster than he ever expected. He now must choose, rise to meet the challenge or risk being overshadowed in the very house built for him. This shift jolts him out of comfort. It commands evolution. It demands transformation. And then there's Max Verstappen, the reigning titan of the sport, the driver who has rewritten what modern dominance looks like. For Max, this unexpected tremor at the heart of the Red Bull empire creates an unfamiliar ripple in a kingdom that once felt indestructible. His authority is uncontested on track, but off it, he now faces uncertainty. Questions emerge. Will the team retain its cohesion? Will the machinery remain elite without the intellectual core that built it? Will Max remain loyal if he senses the empire is cracking beneath his feet? The move forces introspection. He has always controlled his destiny, but now for the first time, variables outside his cockpit are threatening that grip. Nothing is stable. Nothing is fixed. The grid has entered a moment of flux unlike anything seen in recent memory. Every strategist is scrambling. Every journalist is circling. Every driver is paying closer attention. The paddock, usually loud and kinetic, is now humming with a strange electric quiet, like the moment before a thunderclap. Eyes dart. Phones buzz. Rumors spiral at a dizzying pace. Statements are being drafted, embargoes prepared, social media teams put on high alert. Even the broadcasters are preparing emergency coverage plans. Because the announcement is no longer a distant eventuality, it's imminent. It's hurtling toward the sport with the unstoppable weight of inevitability. Days? Maybe. Hours? Possibly. But it's coming. And when that moment lands, when the name is spoken aloud, when the roles are confirmed, when the sport's worst-kept secret is finally unveiled, it won't just spark headlines. It will send aftershocks through every layer of Formula One, from the front rows of grandstands to the darkest corners of the factories. This isn't just a managerial change. It's a collision of ideologies. It's an arms race of influence. It's a redefinition of power, trust, and ambition at the highest possible level. Once it becomes official, once the curtain is pulled back, there will be no turning back. Teams will scramble to adapt. Drivers will recalculate their long-term positions. Sponsors will reassess where their allegiances lie. Engineers will begin quietly reaching out to old contacts. Because the balance of power will no longer be the same. And the DNA of Formula One as we've known it will have been rewritten by a decision that, while made in silence, will echo across the sport for years, if not decades, to come.